Hey, I'm Jenn Donahue. Today, we're going to be talking about taking off our camouflage. Now, I'm not talking about hunters going out there and getting naked. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about imposter syndrome and tokenism and how we can shed these so that we can just be ourselves. So as I said, I'm Jenn Donahue, but also this is Jenn Donahue. I've been in the US Navy for 26 years, both active and reserve. I've had the ability to go to garden spots like Iraq and Afghanistan. And yes, in the military, I do wear a uniform and it is camouflaged. But one of the things I've noticed about whenever I put on my uniform is that I wind up standing a little taller and a little straighter. People have said that when they can absolutely tell when I'm on a military call, because for some reason, my voice gets a little bit deeper and I get more direct with the people who I'm speaking with. These are little bits of camouflage that I put on my normal, happy, bubbly self. So I'm not only just literally wearing the camouflage, I'm figuratively wearing as well so that I can fit into being Captain Donahue. I'm blending in with my counterparts so that I am who they think I'm supposed to be whenever I'm wearing that uniform. I'd like to go over a couple of definitions with you. The first one is imposter syndrome, which I'm sure you've heard about. I call these the clouds of doubt. Have you ever been in a room and you start to look around and you think, ooh, wow, I am way out of my depth here. Maybe I don't belong here. Ooh, I can't do this. What if somebody asks me a question and I don't know the answer? I'm going to look like a fool. I don't belong here. These are the clouds of doubt of imposter syndrome that creep into our head. And that's okay. The question is, how do we get rid of these clouds so that we can just be ourselves and we can concentrate on what we're supposed to be doing in that meeting? So my question to you is, have you ever experienced imposter syndrome? I know that I have several times. And the question is, how did that make you feel? So you go into the chat and just tell me, how did you feel if you were experiencing imposter syndrome? A lot of times you'll say inadequate, or I didn't feel comfortable, or I felt worthless. Those are the feelings we have with imposter syndrome. They're terrible feelings. We want to feel confident. We want to feel like we're there for a reason. But these clouds of doubt come in. So I'm interested to hear how you felt when you've experienced this yourself. Now, the next one I have is tokenism. Now, this is where you're sitting in a room and you look around and you realize, oh man, I'm the only woman in the room. As an engineer, there was only 2 of me in my ocean engineering class. And were even fewer women in the US military that were engineers. In the US Navy Civil Engineer Corps, we're still only 9% women. So it's pretty normal for me to be the only woman in the room. And it would have been really easy for me to feel like the token female. Now, maybe you're saying, I go into a room and I realize I'm the only minority in the room. Am I the token minority? What if you're a millennial or a Gen Z and you go into a room and it's a bunch of us old like Gen Xers and baby boomers and you feel like, oh man, I'm the token millennial. It's horrible feeling like the token. Nobody wants to be the token. I know for myself, whenever I'm in a room like that, I don't want to feel like the token female. I want to be in that room because I am the best at who they need to have in there. For instance, I want to be the best operations officer or the best commanding officer. I don't want to be there because of my gender. I don't want to be put in that position. And so a lot of times when we don't feel confident in ourselves, again, what we do is we camouflage ourselves so that we look like the people around us. We don't want to stand out. We don't want to be ostracized because of who we are. And so a lot of times we put on that camouflage so that we can try to blend in. So have you ever felt like the token? And in the chat, I'd really love to hear, really how that made you feel. It feels awful, doesn't it? It feels like you're not worthy, or you're underrepresented, or, they just wanted you there because of your skin color or your gender. It's a horrible feeling. Nobody ever wants to be the token. So I have 3 case studies for you. The first one is Ada. Now, Ada is the very first female professor at a very prestigious university in a very particular niche of engineering. What's fun about this is that her husband is actually just down the hallway. And a couple things that she's noticed about this is that he keeps his door open all the time, and she listens to the way that he addresses his students. He's very direct with them, and he really tells it how it is. But she feels that she can't really do that. She feels that if she, which is her personality also, if she's very direct with her students, she's afraid she's going to be called certain types of names. She also feels like she has to be softer on the students because she's their first female professor. So she feels like she has to fit this mold of what a female professor is. And she says it's kind of making her miserable because she's having to fit in this mold, and she wants to be more like her husband. She wants to be very direct with her students and tell them how it is and get things done. But she is not comfortable yet going to that position because of the way that she is going to be perceived by her students. It's a tough position to be in. And I'm sure that several of you have felt that way as well. Now, our next case study is Zara. Zara immigrated from Iran, and she came to what she called the land of opportunities. Zara is very beautiful, and she always dresses to the nine. She's also about 5'2", so she always wears these incredibly high heels. I really don't know how she walks around in these things, man. I would totally break my ankle, but she always feels like she wants to be taller, and so she always wears these like 3 and 4 inch heels so that she can, be on par with everybody else. Well, she worked in an office where it was only men. There were females, but they were in different areas, or maybe they were the administrative assistants, but she was the only engineer that was there. Well, the way that she is that she wants to dress to the nines every single day. So she always wore these cute little pencil skirts. They went down to her knee, nothing crazy. Always had a really nice blazer with a blouse on, and she always wore, her makeup perfectly. She looked beautiful every single day that she went into work. And she did this for a couple of years until HR got called on her. HR called and told her that one of the people in her office said that she was dressing inappropriately. What does that mean? So they came out to take a look at her, and they're like, well, you're not really dressing like everybody else in the office. They're wearing loafers and the typical engineering guy thing where they wear like their khaki pants and their blue button down shirts, which is the opposite of what Zara was doing. And somebody had actually called HR on her because of the way that she was dressing. She said, I had no idea. But along the way, she was being ostracized and sidelined, and people didn't want to work with her because she looked different. Even though she was brilliant, she has a PhD in engineering and does some really high-end seismic engineering. But again, people didn't know how to deal with her because she looked different, and they sidelined her. She's since gone on to open up her own company, and she's doing fantastic. And she's still wearing her heels, and she's still wearing her nice little skirts. But she realized that she wasn't wearing the camouflage, and that's why she was being ostracized. And she said, you know what? I don't want to deal with that. I'm going to make my own arena that I can be myself. So our next one is Jenny. Now, Jenny was also working at a firm that was, again, mostly male. I think you guys all understand that most of the times as engineers were in almost all male firms. So she was wearing the camouflage. She had on her khaki pants and kind of a blue button down shirt with the cute little loafers, and she'd go into work every day. She also noticed that whenever she went into meetings, that she was quieter, that she wasn't really voicing her opinion on different types of designs and putting forth new ideas. She was blending in with everybody around the table. Now, one day she decided, you know what? I'm going to wear a skirt to work. So she did. And like totally blew people's minds. Oh my God, we can see Jenny's legs. They didn't actually say that, but you could see it on their faces. Well, what do we do? Like, she looks different. And she decided to wear a skirt a couple days out of the week. But what she noticed is that she started to gain more confidence in who she really was. When she would go into meetings, she started to speak up more. She started to present her own design ideas. And she was really starting to become more comfortable with who she was. She told me later that, you know what, if people don't want to work with me just because of the way that I dress, I don't want to work with them. Because Jenny understood what she brought to the fight. Again, she's absolutely brilliant. She can do some of the most incredible probabilistic hazard analysis that you've ever done. And she knew that she could do it. She knew what she was worth. And she said, you know what? I'm not going to be limited by trying to dress some way. I'm going to dress the way that I want. I am going to speak up and I'm going to speak my mind. Again, she's also gone on to start her very own engineering firm, and they are killing it. You know why? Because she's allowed people to just dress the way that makes them feel the most comfortable. Now, I'm not going through all of this as saying that, yes, you absolutely just have to dress like everybody else, and that's what camouflage is. It's not just what you're physically wearing. It's how you feel when you're wearing it, or the way that you're acting so that you can fit in with other people. So my question to you is it okay to wear camouflage? And I'm not talking about just the figurative, but also the literal. And I would say yes, at first. If you're going to work at a new job, I think it's okay to find out what people are wearing and just kind of go and blend in for a little while. You don't want to go in on your first day and really stick out. Or if you're going to a new social setting, it's probably okay to figure out who these people are and then kind of go in and understand and kind of get a lay of the land, as we say in the military. You don't want to go in with a prom dress if everybody's wearing, jean cutoff shorts. That's not what we're talking about. We want to make sure that at first we understand the people that we're going to be around. What are their values? What are their interests? What are their do's and what are their don'ts? I think it's okay to wear camouflage at the very beginning so that you really understand the people that you're around. Again, get a lay of the land. So when is it not okay to wear camouflage? I would say that if you are miserable because you're trying to fit into some kind of mold that other people think that you're supposed to be, I think it's time to think about taking off the camouflage. The other way is if you are hurting other people by wearing camouflage. So for myself, when I was a young officer, I was put in charge of 18 people, and I had never led anybody before. I was like, I don't know what to do. And so I looked around and kind of got an idea of the lay of the land and looked at the people around me. And you know what? My bosses, they were yellers. They yelled at people. And so I thought, oh, well, you yell at people to make them do what you want to do. Okay, I got this. So I'd been yelled at all these times, and every time I would take in a stack of papers to my boss, he would yell at me. He'd take a red pen and he'd write all over it so it looked like a bloody massacre whenever I got it back. Well, after a few times of this, I thought, well, I guess I need to start this leadership thing. And so I went into my group and I yelled at them, just like I had been. I told them they were worthless. I told them that they had to do better. I can't believe that they would even think about trying to give me some kind of product like that. It's shameful. What's really shameful is how I acted. That wasn't me. I didn't know what I was doing. And so I had put on a type of camouflage to be like the other leaders. Well, you know what? My team, they saw right through that. They knew that that's not who I was. And at the same time, it was almost 26 years ago. I'm still ashamed of the way that I treated those people. So if you are hurting other people by trying to put on some type of camouflage and not being who you truly are, it's time to take that hard look in the mirror. So now what? We've gone over all of this. What do we do? So let's first recognize when you start to have those doubts, those clouds of doubt come into your thoughts. Or maybe you're starting to think like, oh my gosh, I'm the token. The first step is to just recognize that this is happening. Put a label on it. Are these thoughts rational? Are they really irrational? Are they limiting you in what you can do because you're having these kinds of thoughts? Those are good questions to ask. And if you aren't sure, I would say go talk to your spouse or significant other and ask them, do I act differently when I'm in different social settings? And if the answer is yes, you might be wearing some type of camouflage. You might also ask your best friends. Maybe they are picking something up also, that you change who you are in order to be around different people. Now, this might be because you have some imposter syndrome, which is very likely, and that's okay. So in the orange, those are people who have had imposter syndrome. And in the yellow, those are other people who have had imposter syndrome. And in the green, that's literally everybody else who's had imposter syndrome at one time in their life. You can go out and do research. 95% of everybody in the entire world, children, men, women, we all have imposter syndrome from time to time. That's absolutely okay. The question is what do you do about it? And so I have a fourth case study for you, and it's me. So this was me a couple years ago. Now, this is actually my normal color hair. I'm actually a blonde. And there was a time that I was on this board, and I was working for really the grandfathers of geotechnical earthquake engineering, which is what I do. And we call them the graybeards because they're all old. They started at the very beginning. They created this engineering niche, and they've brought it along for the last 40 years. Very knowledgeable, very smart. And I was at the end of the table, and I was just sort of this little blonde girl. Now, they trusted me with several of the analytics and a lot of the analysis that we were doing. But at the same time, I had imposter syndrome and those clouds of doubt, like, how did I get to be here? Am I really worthy to be here? And I wanted to try to blend in somehow, but I was actually called once that little blonde girl at the end of the table. And so I dyed my hair brown. Now, a lot of you can say, what, I dye my hair from time to time, just trying out something new. And I tried to convince myself of that. But in my heart, I really just wanted to look smarter. I felt so uncomfortable that I changed how I looked so that I could blend in a little bit, and that I might feel smarter if I had brown hair instead of blonde hair. Now, since that time, I've absolutely grown to like, what? I have blonde hair. It's who I am. And I feel confident now because I understand what I bring to the fight. I'm smart enough to be in the room. I belong there. But at first, I didn't feel that way. So for me, I had to overcome imposter syndrome by first recognizing it and then having to build my confidence. Now, how do you get there? Well, first, you have to understand this. Does anybody know what this means? It means to know yourself. This was the very first time that it was written in 1400 BC. It was a Delphic maxim. It was written on the temple to Apollo. Now, what this tells me is that those old guys, they knew what they were talking about. You have to know yourself. You have to know your worth. Understand your strengths, understand your weaknesses, but you have to start with always knowing who you are. So let's get to the next piece of the pyramid. We're going to evaluate. When is the best time to start to take off the camouflage? This is a little bit old school, but I want you to grab a pen and I want you to grab a piece of paper. And I want you to start writing down all of your accolades. I don't care if you start with, I won the 6th grade science fair. I want you to write it down. I want you to write down, hey, you know what? I graduated from college. Hey, you know what? I killed it on this project last week, or whatever it is, any kind of award that you've ever won. And this is going to start looking like confidence to you, because you are starting to understand who you are and what you bring to the fight. Look at these accolades, write them down. There's something to be said about when you write all of this down and you actually look at it on paper, and you start to realize, wow, I have what it takes. I'm going to start to embrace my strengths that I have, because that's going to take us to the next piece, and that's to act. So really, when is the best time to think about taking off that camouflage? Now, here's a picture, and it's of my hat and my boots and my shirt that I wear with my uniform. Now, the one thing that you don't see is you don't see my pants. Okay, so I will tell you that after 26 years, I don't feel ready to take it all off. I feel like I still have to keep a little bit of that figurative camouflage on. Now, over time, I have started to take off little bits of my camouflage, figuratively, not literally. That's frowned upon when you start taking off clothes in the military. But I've started to take figuratively off some of those pieces. I learned before that I'm not a yeller. I need to embrace who I am. And I've started to take on more of my true personality when I'm in my uniform. But I'm not quite there yet. And that's okay. I'm just not quite ready. I have a couple more months before I'm able to retire, and then I can just take off the entire uniform at once. But for me, I'm just not quite ready. And many people are probably in that same situation. And I'll just tell you that's okay. Now, what are our key takeaways? What are you going to do tomorrow morning? We're going to start with that hard look in the mirror. Are you wearing camouflage? Are you limiting yourself? Are you having clouds of doubt and you're starting to believe them? Or are you saying, you know what, this is a cloud and I'm going to get rid of it. I need a nice sunny day. Understand who you are. Next, pick up the phone. Call a mentor and say, you know what, I need to be myself. Am I ready? And they'll probably give you some great ideas on how to really start to become your true self. Maybe it's just calling your best friend saying, you know what, I'm ready. Have those conversations. Now, I also want you to think about these questions and thoughts. I want you to focus on your value. What do you bring to the fight? What are your values? What do you most treasure? Write it down. Remember it. Track your successes. Again, we talked about writing that all on paper. A good friend of mine has a book. And in that book, he writes down all of his successes. So when he starts to have these clouds of doubt, or he starts to feel like the token, he goes and he opens up this book and he starts to read through all of his successes. And that helps him get back on track. So you can do the same thing. Remind yourself of the positives. When we're always concentrating on the negatives, that's not going to bring us any further. So start focusing on all the positive aspects of your life and what you've achieved. Embrace those strengths. Yes, we all have weaknesses or areas to improve upon, but we have strengths. It's what makes us who we are. Start to embrace those. Most importantly, stop comparing yourself to others. Don't look at somebody else in the room and look at their positives and their strengths as your weakness. Look at it as an inspiration for what you can become. You can also look at it as, if you're comparing yourself to others, that's the thief of joy. Understand that you bring something to the fight, because companies, they don't like to waste money on people. And if they put you in a position, it's because you deserve to be there. So stop comparing yourself to others. And with that, I'd like to say thank you. I really appreciate the Chicago Women in Technology having me here at this conference. With that, go out and do great things.